I'm going to present to you some nutritional strategies that you can use in your daily life as a training athlete in order to maximize your performance, maximize your gains, and see the most benefit that you can. Number one is the replenishment of glycogen. When we exercise, imagine each muscle has a little gas tank. There's a bunch of different fuels in the gas tank, but one of them is muscle glycogen. And as we exercise at a high level of intensity, that glycogen level gets lower and lower and lower. What we need to do is replenish that glycogen, especially if we have another training session or another practice the next day. The most effective way to do this, according to research, is a hit of high glycemic index carbohydrates immediately following your training session, followed by intermittently spaced amounts of low GI carbs. I talked about glycemic index in the macronutrients video. High glycemic index carbohydrates being fast to absorb and fast to digest, where low glycemic index carbohydrates are slower. So these are going to be like your vegetables. Fruits are sort of on the lower end, where high GI carbs are going to be, cereal, bread, pitas, crackers, what most people think of when they think of carbohydrates. So I spoke about avoiding high GI foods for the majority of the day. However, immediately following a training session, have some high GI carbohydrates. Get those fast digesting carbs in your body to kickstart that glycogen replenishment, and follow those up every hour and a half with just a small handful of rice, maybe an apple and an orange, some broccoli and some cauliflower, whatever you want on the low GI side. This system has been proven by research to be most effective for replenishing your glycogen after a training session. Second, we're going to talk about protein intake. That's a very common question, is when should I take my protein? You always see everyone drinking a protein shake immediately after the gym. As far as the digestibility of protein, aim for eating your protein as opposed to drinking your protein. Fluids go through your body a lot faster than food does. And so if you have the same amount of protein in food versus a drink, you'll absorb more of it out of the food because it'll be in your system for longer. As far as timing of protein intake goes, protein sensitivity is highest immediately following a training session. So we beat up our body, we're going to be more sensitive to that protein that we ingest. Now, that isn't to say that you need to have your protein immediately after your training session, or else you're not going to gain any muscle or whatever. If you can get home in half an hour and eat protein, or you have the option to bring a protein shake to the gym and drink it right after your workout, I say wait the half hour and go home and eat your protein there. Just make sure you're trying to get a good amount of protein within like an hour or so, while your sensitivity is still fairly high. And if there isn't any protein available for you to eat, or you got to go right to work after a workout, or you don't have the opportunity to eat a good amount of protein, then by all means supplement with a protein shake. That's fine. The whole point here is that protein sensitivity is highest close to the workout, and so just try to get your protein as close as you can to the workout, preferably by eating it rather than drinking it. Next, we're talking about increasing and decreasing our weight. Some coaches may come to you after a season and say, all right, for the next preseason, I want you to be, 5 pounds heavier. What they're not saying is go to McDonald's and eat 4 Big Macs a day and pack on 5 pounds of fat. What they're saying is we want to build lean muscle while keeping our body fat at a fairly low level in order to be bigger and stronger for whatever purpose they have for you on the field. Maybe they want to use you as a bit more of a power role as opposed to being, a speed and finesse player. You got to get a little bit bigger in order to satisfy that demand. The best way to do this is to increase our protein intake throughout the day, and then we can increase our carbohydrates a little bit after training as well. So increasing our protein throughout the day is just going to supply us with some good amino acids that we can use to build muscle, while also supplying us with some extra calories that we wouldn't have gotten if we didn't increase our protein intake. As far as carbohydrates goes, increasing them after your training for the rest of the day isn't the end of the world. It's going to help with our glycogen replenishment, and we're going to still get some extra calories that we wouldn't have gotten if we were sticking with, low carbohydrate nutrition planning. Try to think of carbohydrates more as a recovery tool, and if you're trying to build on a few pounds, you can increase them a little bit after your training because it'll sort of work into that glycogen replenishment process as well. Now let's just say our coach says, all right, we need you to come back lighter. There are a few strategies we can employ to do this. Most important being the caloric deficit. We want to be eating less calories than we're using throughout the day. So we can either increase our exercise or we can decrease our caloric intake through our nutrition plan. If we're taking the increase in exercise route, never a bad idea to increase your oxidative exercise. This means low intensity, longer duration. As much as it isn't sport specific, the body prefers to burn fats at lower intensities. Measuring your oxygen consumption is the most effective way to make sure that you're in the right zone, but there is an associated heart rate to the amount of work you're doing, so we can also gauge it with heart rate. Now, once you're in that about 60% to 65% heart rate zone, that's the perfect place to burn a lot of fat. You're doing enough work that your body actually needs to sort of, burn fat fats to get enough energy, but you're not at a high enough intensity that's going to switch to carbohydrate preference. As we go to higher levels of intensity, the body prefers to use carbohydrates. So we want to keep it low in order to maximize our fat consumption. And the problem here is that going slow, we need to increase the duration in order to actually do anything. If you're going at a low intensity for 10 minutes, we're not actually going to burn that much fat. Our bodies are using fat, yes, but we're not going to get that much done. So 30 to 40 minutes on a bike at 120 beats per minute. Toss something on TV, put on your favorite movie, and just spin, and you will start to increase your fat utilization. Now, in terms of fat loss, it's not just about losing an absolute amount of fat. We can also play with our body fat percentage. So if we have this much muscle and this much fat, we can have a lower body fat percentage by dropping our fat or increasing our muscle. If we build muscle, then that amount of fat, as long as it stays the same, will become a smaller percentage of our total body, right? And so the best way to lose fat is to actually build muscle at the same time. So nutritionally, we want to maintain our protein intake so that we can actually build muscle while we're training. If we don't eat enough protein, you're potentially going to lose some muscle. Sort of on the same token, we can also decrease our carbohydrate intake. If we decrease our carbohydrate intake for an extended period of time, I'm talking weeks at a time, our body will actually use more fat. It'll utilize the fat that it has in order to supplement this decrease in carbohydrate intake. And so this is sort of the ketogenic fad that's been going on lately. There is science behind it. If we decrease the amount of carbs that we eat, our body will preferentially increase our fat utilization. The problem is it's hard to maintain, especially as an athlete. If we're decreasing our carbs, it's going to be a lot harder to replenish our muscle glycogen, and it's going to affect your performance. If we're really serious about fat loss, we're going to avoid late-night snacking, and we're not actually going to buy junk foods at all. Preventing junk food from entering your house is going to be the best way to prevent yourself from eating it. You may have low willpower, but if it's not there, you're going to go look in the cupboard for some snacks, and you're not going to have anything to eat. You have to settle for some vegetables or for a healthy source of protein or what have you. Now, I'm not saying don't ever eat junk food. I mean, I'm guilty every now and then. I'll go for a beer with one of my friends, and we'll have some chips and dip or something. Like that's, as long as you're smart about it, everything in moderation. But limiting the amount that you have available to you is the most effective way to actually set yourself up for success. If you look in my fridge, I don't keep a lot of junk food in there because I know that some night I'm going to go in my fridge and I'm going to want to eat some junk food. So instead what I do is I keep my vegetable drawer completely loaded so that late at night, if I'm feeling a little peckish, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to grab a green pepper. Just don't buy it. And not having it there is going to do all the work for you. You don't even have to think about it. You're going to eat much healthier just automatically.